I insisted I had to go to work because Mum couldn't cope. She was in a dreadful state. And eventually we got permission for local council to go to work. I was just turned 11 o'clock then. I've been moving about so much, you're trying to keep together, you know. So it was very, whilst we had a good family relationship as such, it was desperate.
Yeah.
We lived on starvation times virtually, just about. Well, Mother died, I say it was just after 11. I was working already by then. My younger sister was taken by my mother's younger sister, and I insisted I was going to go on my own because I didn't like the way they were handling things. It was pretty desperate until I met somebody who said if I go to Hull and get on a tour, I would do better that way, which I did. So when we decided to go to London, because if anybody with any knowledge about it could find any sort of a job there, big place, must be plenty. And so I worked my way down for that. I found 1 or 2 bits of jobs and just keep things together. So I got placed in a job with a Polish Jew who was making ladies' mantles and coats and things for the big stores in Knightsbridge End of London. As a run of art, do whatever you know, learn what you can. And he looked after me like a son of his own son there. Lovely. I was on 30 shillings a week at that time. After a year he gave me another. That made me up to £2, which was a pretty good wage in those days, a very good wage. But unfortunately the war came along. We knew it was coming, quite easily we knew that. I mean, Ben Shapiro, it was a refugee from the previous World War, come from Poland. And Dad found their 2 sons, both of whom joined the forces after me. So they got around January. The war started a few months earlier to be here for in France. January I decided that being a single man, it'd be better join up and perhaps take the place of somebody who's married with kids. You see what I mean? I did. And it was amazing how fast things moved. I signed on one day. I was given 24 hours to clear up my effects and come back and pick up a uniform, which I did. Took us round. We were enrolled in Hammersmith in London, and they took us round the corner somewhere to a base where they fitted us out, uniforms. The last thing they gave us was a steel helmet and a rifle. And then one day, evacuating the soldiers from Dunkirk. At midnight that night, we were towed out by a destroyer. You see, the water off Dunkirk was a bit like Southport. Very long way up, no depth. So it'd be about 4 or 5 miles up for any big ship that couldn't manoeuvre. There's not good enough water. They need all the 15 to 16 feet, some of these boats, you see. So my job was to ferry them out to these boats, 4 or 5 miles, maybe even 6 at times, from the beaches. So we were together our position. It was just dawn, was just breaking. And I said, look, you just these empty beaches, there's nothing there but empty beaches, and our chaps on it, get them over. But when we started approaching and storm woke a bit more, we saw these jetties. They weren't jetties, there were men standing up to you waiting for us to pick them up. No lines in the water. And we got to the first one. There was a sergeant on the alley. He says, "How many can you take?" I said, "No idea. Keep loading till we ready to stop." But first of all, they said, "Give a shout along the line," and the next thing we know, there was two blokes got on, and they passed some wounded people on their heads over the top of it. We didn't put them in the cover, put them on the top, just in case. And then load as many men we could. We loaded until we were about that much seaway, knowing when we were moving we were going to get a... Because the sea, I'd never seen the sea so calm. Wonderful. And then we started off. I suppose we'd gone about 2 miles, 2.5 miles, something like that. And then the Focke-Wulfs came, machine gunning. Then the Messerschmitts. And then almost immediately after came the Stukas, the dive bomber. The chaps standing up laid their bodies over the injured people to protect them. Wonderful. Anyway, we made the trip, unloaded, but decided we wouldn't take any more wounded, they'll let them stay to be hospitalised by the Germans. Much more sensible. We get more people on board then. So we had about 30 or more people on. Next trip, another trip. We went for 3 days and nights. Every now and then the ship's cook would give us a big mug of cocoa and a huge sandwich. And fuel, we got the free fuel. And on one trip coming back, loaded, one of the boats conked, and we decided to give him a tow. And we just pulling out ahead of him, through a rope, the dive bomb. I was in the stern with a rope that would just throw it. Whether it was a direct hit or not, I do not know. But it was very close if it wasn't. It actually exploded underneath the boat. I was slapped in the face with somebody's torn off arm. Nearly knocked me out of the boat. But no survivors virtually. So we went on. You know, it's the first time I've been able to bring that to mind without bringing tears into my eyes. They're close, but I managed it. The sort of amazing thing is, perhaps one of the most amazing was a Halifax bomber came in from, I don't know where he'd been. Very badly shot up. He got half of one wing and only the outboard motor going on the other wing. Half his tail shot away altogether, and there was just a skeletal part of the body behind the wing. And they landed on one wheel. Fortunately, the moment as they touched the ground, the engine stopped, went out of fuel. So it was a bit of easy, they were good. There were several people very badly injured, and of course they were hospitalised immediately. We saw quite a few things like that. So things were going nice and down until D-Day. Up to this point, it had never been thought necessary for any of us civilians to have a pass. We recognise, we know who we are, nothing wrong. But suddenly, midnight, D-Day, it's midnight, clamp comes down. I was already on duty as on the night shift. Nobody else but me on the job. And none of the others had passes, and they didn't get them for 3 days. Things were much too busy getting planes off and on. So, never got much sleep at all, because I've got to maintain the filters on the fuel tanks for these vehicles, and make sure the main lighting in the bomb bays, the dumps, were all okay, that people could use these out, as well as maintain the comfort. And in the process, our planes, which were flying at low level for selective bombing ahead of our troops, were getting badly shot up. So as quite, I won't say often, but not unoften, they'd crash off the side of the bomber. One of these did do that in particular, one night. And I had to get out there and repair, because it upset the runway lighting onto either side, as you might say. They were in such little hollow domes that you saw only from this angle, you couldn't see them from that angle, so they wouldn't be seen from air, these. And of course they were necessary for piloting them out in the dark. So I was repairing this plane had gone over the side, repairing the cables on the master jointing there. When I watched as the dawn broke, another plane came in. He was clear of the wing bombers, but he hadn't got cleared of his Bombay bombers. And I watched 400 500-pounders drop out of it as he touched down and blew up. No further away than that hole. And the blast sucked me up out and threw me about 15-20 feet. Landed on my back. I thought I'd break my back, but I realised when I could move my limbs around that it was only probably very badly bruised. It hurt like hell for weeks, but carried on. And then one day, till getting near the end of the European War, they decided somebody needed to inspect the main transformer block from where the mains came down into the airfield. It hadn't been seen since the whole place was built, it was a few years back, didn't it? It probably needed a paint on. So I go and unlock the place and go in. It's an open brick sort of thing with an iron gate with no top. So it's exposed to the weather. And I go in. There's all the equipment that had come down from the overhead lines into here, passing through a package of things into 3 huge cables into the main transformer. 30 or 33,000 volts. And as I went in to check, I slightly brushed one of them. Didn't know the installation had broken down. It caught me, threw me. I remember last thought that went through the mind was, oh God, I've had it. As casually as that. No panic. Oh God, I've had it. accepting it. And the next thing I know, it's such wonderful peace. And there's darkness all around. And it feels like I'm a million miles out in space. And I realise there's a great light. And I was alive. It's all lovely, peaceful, this beautiful light in the darkness. And it came, not a thought, but a knowing. There's something that has to be done. I have to go and do it. And looked around and looked down. And there's this little body lying across these cables. And that was me. And so I looked over there. Oh dear. Have we got to go through that all again, get born all over again? I don't think we've got time for that. Get this back on. So every time I was there, the hardest thing that I ever did in my life was to draw a breath in order to energise it. And it lifted up for me. I found this front down here was smouldering. And the boots, the soles of my boots were smouldering. And the body was not touched. Not touched. Not a scorch, nothing. Not a blister. I don't know how to explain that. A miracle. I was shocked. I sort of staggered out the gate and laid on the grass outside and looked up at the sky, and there was a couple of cumulus white clouds. Oh, this is wonderful. That was my first indication there was something beyond. I knew there was a birth could be. But I knew also that when this one was over, I wouldn't have to come back anymore. It was all knowing without any thought at all. I know such peace. And then I reported back to say that the thing was needed dealing with because somebody's going to get killed here. I was utterly, completely drained, exhausted, physically, mentally and emotionally, in every way. And I sat myself down. What would really want out of all this? And I was just to be happy with it. And if I go this line or that line, would it produce it? And maybe the answer came no. Until I couldn't think of any other way, and it all said no. So I thought, well, there's only one thing to do now. Say goodbye to my friend. Only a couple of shillings in my pocket and start walking. Something somewhere which told me. I don't know how long went on, no idea. I remember too, in the countryside, I dug up some weeds of the frozen ground with my fingers to eat. It lasted me for 3 days, as I recall. Again, as I got a picture in the mind, naked, laying on a grassy bank, watching my clothes drying out in the sunshine on the other bank. Oh, watching. And then, a blazing hot day, walking across the moors in Devon. I know that very well now. I came across a showman, a fairground man, with his coach there sitting on the step, with a big mug of tea in his hand. And as I approached him, they said, "You look as though you could do with one of these." I said I could. And Rick called his wife and gave me one. I said, "You look as though you had a tough time." He said, "When did you last eat?" I said, "I don't know, I think 2 or 3 days ago." So his wife gave me a meal. He said, "Do you want a job?" I said, "Yes, I'll do anything that's available." He said, "Do you know anything about horses?" I said, "No, not really. You feed them one end and they crap out the other." That's the words I use. He said, "You look as though you could do it." He looked straight to me. He said, "Well, if you can get a new key by 7 o'clock in the morning, there's a job for you." It's only about 70 miles away. Anyway, I decided to have a go. So he gave me a note for £0.50, and off I went. I got there just as they were beginning to pull out of the ground at Dunkirk. How it was, I don't know. To this day, I don't know. It's sort of magical. In the process, I used to sleep with the animals. Little camp bed, I slept there in the stables with them. I came to love those creatures. They responded. And I thought, after a year or so, I thought, yeah, if I could only know their true natures underlying this, I could perhaps do even better. Now, the one thing you must understand out there is, these animals are always well treated. After all, they were the tools of the trade. They depended on them. They had to look after them. You see? So they looked always very kindly, and even the training was very carefully done. So it's all done by response and not by torture. And I thought I could do even better if I only knew their underlying nature. And I determined that I would find out. So I thought, well, all I've got to do really is very, very simple. All I've got to do is observe, 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 and not allow myself to jump to any conclusions whatsoever, because that would be wrong. Until I know instinctively, I'm not going to really get it. Now, how I knew that, I don't know. But that was the determination I set myself. And from that point on, that's what I did. Even at the point of taking my meals with them, as well as sleeping with them. No. After about 3 months, I realised I'd stopped thinking. Still able to do everything necessary and respond to people without thinking. It was something unusual. But I still didn't know. So we carried on. We went out in summer months, theatre in winter months, otherwise a few weeks here and there, winter quarters. It's over another 3 years. I think we're at Darlington about September time, when it's getting quite cold in the evening. I woke up one morning, just dawn, and sort of looked across from where I was. The horses were lying down. And I watched the steam coming out of the cold morning. And the next thing, I'm the horse. I'm looking through the horse's eyes and knowing what the horse's nature was. Strange. and looked across from the horse and said, "There's me lying in bed." Turned that back and I came back to bed and now look at the horse again. But I knew the nature. And at every one I saw the same thing. And this is very strange. And I went out and opened up the lounge, had a look at them and I knew why. They're not that vicious after all, underlying it. They're afraid, fighting for their life. They're not vicious on them. And we had a couple of conversations on it. One of them came around. I knew them too. I looked across. There's a tree over there, a new tree. And I turned to look in this. Just different forms. Wonderful. Peace. It stayed with me. Didn't change. I'm still doing everything without thinking. Then one day I mean, I can think if I want to, but it's not really necessary most of the time. And then trying to think about it, well, this is really something very wonderful that people should have. Well, how do I explain it to anybody? Nobody'd understand what I'm talking about. Because we're still moving around counter-town all over the place. I used to visit various churches. I was thinking church, but you would know where they had the clue. I'm deluded. Or even blasphemous.